Well, the Bucs continue to be one of the most disappointing teams in the NFL. Who's to blame? We'll get to that and more right here on the Play Reaction. Hey guys, Corey Draper here. I'm back for another quick reaction to the Bucs game. It just ended and I've got a lot to say on it, and I know I'm disappointed. I'm sure you are too. Real quick, wanted to remind you to subscribe because I will be doing more of these in the future, and also follow me at the Play Reaction or at Corey the Draper, either one. I will interact with you and we can follow this misery together. This week I'm going to be a little bit more structured. First we're going to talk about the offense, then we're going to talk about the defense, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about more of like who's to blame, and then possibly what is coming up next. Is the season over? Things like that. But we'll kick it off right now with the offense. So yeah, the offense was non-existent. They only scored 3 points and they looked so great last year, and this year, what happened? Well, there's a lot of things that happened. Jameis looked off the whole game, not just the first half. This time it was both halves. Overthrowing receivers just was inaccurate the whole time. The running game was inconsistent, we'll just say that. The offensive line was not good at all. In fact, I would actually blame a lot of this on the offensive line. They committed terrible penalties when we got big plays, and then also they just did not give Jameis time in the pocket to throw. So the offensive line is solid, but definitely needs to be bolstered. The offensive line is solid normally, but clearly lacking, and Donovan Smith is a usual suspect. I'll have to watch the game film to really see how bad he struggled, but I constantly see his name coming up and him just getting burned, and that needs to change. It may be time to think about other options at left tackle. But it's not just all on the offense. I think the biggest thing about the offense today was the play calling. You noticed that Doug looked good early on. He got stuffed a couple of times here and there, but again, Jameis Winston was passing way too often in this game, and Doug had a solid performance. He had over 70 yards, and he had some good, tough, really great runs. He got stops in the backfield a couple of times, so it was up and down. It's not like he was lights out. However, they said the stat on the broadcast that when Jameis throws over 40 passes, we're winless, or maybe one win. I can't remember which one. Either way, it's not a good record. And for whatever reason, this season, Dirk is just refusing to run. It's like we run once, we get stopped, he decides to pass in the next 2 downs. We run on first down and he gets a great gain, then we'll try to run until he gets stopped, and then we abandon it. It seems to be very reactionary, and it's really frustrating, honestly, if you ask me. And inconsistency is the biggest thing when it comes to this offense. Last week, they were great. This week, they were terrible. Last week, the play calling was really good. This week, the play calling was questionable. Last week, Jameis looked on fire, even though he had an injured shoulder. This week, it looked like the injured shoulder was bothering him. Very frustrating, and really, if a couple of things go our way, if he connects on 1 or 2 of those deep passes with Deshaun Jackson or Mike Evans, it's a different ball game. If a few of those penalties aren't called, it's a different ball game. But we just kept shooting ourselves in the foot offensively, and it was just poor. But now let's talk about the defense. Now, if you watched my video last week, you'll know how I mentioned that it seems like each unit takes turns being the good unit. So sometimes it's special teams, right, with Nick Folk missing his kicks being the terrible unit. Sometimes it's offense, like you saw this week, and sometimes it's defense, like you saw last week. It seems like they trade off game by game as to which unit is not doing their job. And I think this is the most frustrating thing about this team. This week, even without Brent Grimes or Robert McClain, the 2 starters on the outside last week, even with them gone on the injury report, suddenly Vernon Hargreaves is playing great. Suddenly we have Javian Elliott out there balling. Like, it just, Ryan Smith looked good. We were finally clicking defensively, and they actually looked pretty good. Now, the problem is, though, the main problem is we still can't get any pressure on the quarterback. The sacks are lacking, the pressure's lacking. Cam had a lot of time to throw on a lot of these plays. Honestly, that's still not good enough. While this defense did its job enough for us to be able to compete, we still couldn't get any type of pass rush, and that is worrisome. It's going to be a long season. It really is, and it's hard to sugarcoat it, but without that pass rush, we're going to face some really good quarterbacks. We still have yet to face Drew Brees, who we face next week, and Matt Ryan, who we face in a few weeks. It's not looking good. While the defense made me hopeful, I wonder if some of it was Cam just not being great. I don't think the Panthers are all that good offensively, so I think that might have helped things a little bit for our our defense. And I think that makes it all the more frustrating that we couldn't capitalize on a team that we might be better than. But here we sit at 2-5. Is the season over? Well, last year we were at 3-5 before going on an incredible run. The defense turned it around, the offense picked up, and we were able to salvage a 9-7 season last year when we were 3-5, and honestly, we're not looking all that great. Can we have that same kind of turnaround here? Well, honestly, it seems a lot different. It does. I know a lot of fans were throwing this team under the bus last year at the same time, saying this defense is terrible and Mike Smith needs to go, a lot like they are this year. But honestly, I had a lot of hope last year at this point. I still believed in this defense. I still believed in this team. And sure enough, they turned it around. This year, for some reason, it feels different. It seems like the team is not believing in themselves. It seems like they're uninspired. It just seems like a different team, and honestly it seems like they're unraveling, and I don't have as much confidence. And the thing that hurts us the most is that the Panthers obviously won and beat us, the Falcons won, and the Saints won. All three of our division opponents won today and we lost, and that's honestly like having 2 losses in 1 week. So is the season over? No, not technically, but honestly it's not looking great. And if you ask me, we are at the very best. The best we can hope for at this point is 7-9. Which is so disappointing. We came in this season really expecting to compete and expecting to potentially win the division. And honestly, looking at the rest of our division, I think we have the talent to do that, but we're not executing. And we're not living up to our expectations. If you look at every team that has our record or worse or 3 wins, and you compare them to this team and the talent on each team, does it match up to you? Does it really seem like we should be 2-5? It doesn't to me. So that leads me to the next question. Who's to blame? Is Jameis Winston to blame? Is he too inconsistent? Not in my opinion. Honestly, I think this year Jameis has looked great. Yes, he is inconsistent. Yes, he has slow starts. But honestly, he has been there, and until this game has given us every chance to win. And also maybe except for that Minnesota game. But honestly, Jameis has still climbed up this season. He has looked better this year than he has last year if you look at the game tape. It's not Jameis Winston. Is it Mike Smith? Is it Dirk Koetter? I think you're warmer there. I really think that this team being 2-5 is unacceptable, and I think the blame goes straight to the coaches. Dirk Koetter is inconsistent in his play calling, which I think is leading to Winston's inconsistency. It's been whispered out there that maybe he should give up play calling duties to Todd Monken, who has been an offensive coordinator before, not in the NFL, but he's had some success. So maybe Todd Monken is the answer. Maybe that can get the offense going. But the problem is still the defense is inconsistent, and that lays on Mike Smith. And honestly, I don't know enough about football X's and O's to tell you if it's his fault, if he needs to do things differently. I don't know, honestly. I think the bigger question is, do we fire them? Do we just clean house? Do we get rid of Koetter? Do we get rid of Mike Smith? Do we bring Gruden in here? No. The answer to that is no. And I firmly believe that we cannot continue turning over coaches every 2 years. We have to give them time. Dirk Koetter is still a young head coach. This is only his 2nd year, and he's gonna make mistakes. Unfortunately, this is a wasted year. He's got all this talent, and he's wasting it because he's learning. Honestly, if we get rid of Dirk, if we start firing coaches over and over again, we're gonna set ourselves back 2 more years. Every time we fire a coach, we set ourselves back, because then we have new systems coming in and new playbooks, and it hasn't worked. Firing Gruden, firing Raheem Morris, firing Greg Schiano, firing Lovie Smith. Where has that gotten us? So let's take a breath. Let's take a deep breath. Instead of calling for heads to roll, let's see how the season plays out. Is it over? Maybe it is. Do we go 7-9? Do we go 6-10? It's looking like it. Do we fire coaches because of that? No. We need consistency. Now, the one caveat to that is if there's dissension in the locker room. If Dirk has lost the locker room, if Mike Smith has lost his players, then maybe you consider making some changes. Maybe. If we go winless to finish out the season, maybe we'll talk then. And we might revisit this every week as we lose. But right now I'm saying, no, let's calm down. Let's see how it plays out. We have the talent. We have the ability. We're playing under our talent. And that does lie on the coaches. That is the coach's fault. That is Dirk's fault. That is Mike Smith's fault. That's all the position coaches. Blame the coaches, but heads do not need to roll yet. So can we agree on that, to just wait? Let's breathe. Let's have patience. Disappointing? Yes. Let's get the disappointment out of the way. Let's take this team for what it is. And let's continue to see where we can find hope hope and see if this team can bring it together at the end of the year. All right, I'm gonna go watch some Stranger Things to get my mind off this game. It's your turn now. Feel free to vent. Let me know, should heads roll? Who's to blame for all this disappointment? What needs to happen? Do you still have hope for this team? I wanna know about it. Let me know in the comments. Remember to subscribe and follow me on Twitter, and let's talk about it. Let's get all of our emotions out. All right, until next week, go Bucs.